Red Viking Trucker, Werewolf Trucker Nation. I did not plan on doing another stream today. I did one today driving through the mountains in Colorado. Beautiful scenery if you'd watch that. Somebody sent me an email and asked why the quality is bad because I've got streaming straight to YouTube and I'm going up and down 3,000 and 4,000 foot mountain passes. So I just try to show you guys exactly what I'm in the middle of, which is kind of the stream tonight. I was very humbled by this young lady. She reached out to me and kind of told me a little bit of her story. I'm a huge proponent of women seeing that this business is a way to rebuild themselves, divorce, job loss, bankruptcy, medical bills, whatever it is. Most women probably never considered this business, especially women that are more dainty. And this woman is, I'm not going to say dainty because she's an explorer and a traveler and an adventurer, and she's rugged, but she's really dainty. And she's going to use trucking to rebuild her life, and it's an amazing story. So I want to introduce you guys to her. And let me bring her on the screen here. Hold on one second. Got to find my cursor. Miss Carrie, how do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you so much for making time for this stream. I'm very, very flattered and honored that you would come on here and share your story, especially to other women I'd have ever thought about truck driving. Let me do this. First and foremost, where are you from originally?
I'm from England.
Yeah, you've lost a lot of your accent. We'll say that up front. So you're raised in England. What about your upbringing to this point in your life? I mean, what did your parents do? What did you, how many siblings, et cetera?
I'm one of 5 kids, 18 months between all of us. My mom had 5 of us under the age of 11 by 29 years old. My dad was a firefighter for the London Fire Brigade, and my mom was a police officer. Obviously, when she had us.
Your mom was a police officer?
Yes.
Okay, so you were raised in a strict household or no?
Yeah. Well, being the oldest, I was, yes. When it got to number 3 and 4, it got to a little less.
Yes, it tested having kids of my own. The younger ones get the easier treatment.
They do. And then when I was 20, I went out full time as a missionary to Southeast Asia.
When you were 20?
Yeah, just turned 20.
What made a 20-year-old decide that she wanted to go share her faith with the world at 20? Because most 20-year-olds, now women are a lot more advanced than men. You and I both know that. I raised daughters, and when they were 8, they were like a 40-year-old. You decided at such a young age to go share your faith.
I was in England at a Christian conference, and I heard a man talk about the persecuted church in China and how they needed Bibles. And also they talked about the old stories from the KGB. And when I was actually 16, I got on a plane, first time ever out of England, with a backpack, and went over and worked with a ministry to take Bibles into China. I got hooked. And so, long story short, between 16 and 18, I worked a little bit and did a few things, saved up some money, and then went out full time when I was 20 years old.
Now, let me ask you this. When you were doing that in China, was that legal to do, to take Bibles into China?
No.
You allegedly took Bibles into China. We'll clean that story up a little bit for the video. That's a great story, though. And then,
yes and no.
Yes, I understand. Well, the reason I ask is because I thought it was like you can't even, Anyway, but listen. So at a young age, you had a very strong conviction about going and traveling the world and sharing your faith.
Yes. And mostly helping people, giving of myself to others. And in all the years I served, we lived on very little, but the satisfaction, I feel like I've lived 3 or 4 times more than I've seen other people's lives. So I'm very, very humbled to be able to just be so satisfied with what I've done in my life so far.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, you don't need to be super specific. I know the answer, but you can be broad if you want to. What age category do you fall in now?
I'm 41. I don't care.
Well, I didn't know, especially on camera. I mean, you told me privately, but on camera. But I think one of the cool things is and that's part of this stream. We haven't talked about a lot of it what we're gonna get to. But at a young age, you just went out and started just chewing on the world. You just went out and just, I'm gonna get away from the house. I'm gonna go out and do these things in different countries. Allegedly take Bibles into a country that it was illegal to do. You had this spirit of just an adventurer, and just like you were just gonna go do what you were gonna do. Like you were strong-willed and bullheaded about it almost, right?
And whenever even my father would attest, whenever I'm told no, my dad's Irish, so we're very stubborn. And so it's like, if you're going to tell me no, then I'm going to go do it.
What did your parents think about that, by the way, since you were making that move? What did they think about that?
They were always behind me. They just made sure that it was something I wanted to do, double check everything. And then they were always encouraging and behind every single one of us to go out and live our lives.
And then you got into missionary work. Before we start talking about your husband, what were the toughest things for you about missionary work and being in different countries? Because even in England, English people, American people, we live pretty well compared to a lot of third world nations. Most people that have never been overseas have no concept of how bad some of these countries are. What were your toughest challenges being a missionary?
Personally, just being away from family and stuff, but you could give that up knowing that you were helping others. Overseas, the hardest thing was just staying in the country, raising funds, and dealing with keeping that going, but to serve beyond yourself and to help others and see people being helped, whether it's refugees from a country that is war-torn or children that need, parents, orphans, or again, helping a persecuted nation or something like that. It was all worth it. It really was.
And then at some point in this journey, how old were you when you met your husband? Because he was also doing missionary work, right?
Yeah. So he came over for a summer to work with the same organization that I was working with. We hit it off real, just the best of friends, like a house on fire. I was 21 years old at the time. Actually, 20. I was still 20.
You met him almost as soon as you went out, as far as just being
Yeah.
friends.
About again, it's a long time ago. About 6 months into it. Yeah. Long story short, after the summer, he returned to the States, asked if I was interested in a relationship. I said no. We're really good friends. I don't want things to get weird. But 20 years old, I'm not really interested in a relationship right now. But we remained friends for 10 years, and then the tables turned. I got into Facebook when Facebook first came out. I was in the middle of China. We were both going through some stuff. I saw him and was just like, oh, he turned out pretty good 10 years later. And we got chatting and became really good friends. And then long story short, pretty much decided that this is going to be something, and got engaged. 6 weeks later, got married.
It was like once it all happened, it kind of just rolled together really fast.
Yes.
Other than the 10 years making him wait, putting him on a leash, friend zoning him.
Yeah.
No.
I think sometimes our timing and seasons, and sometimes there's a good timing and a bad timing for things in our lives. And then, obviously after we're married, we talk, well, if you had let me, date you back then, we could have been married another 10 years, but it just, we chuckled about that. But I think it just was seasons and timing, I think.
Let me ask you this. This is a spur of the off the cuff question based on what you just said. And I've also from the pre-interview, and also just some of your initial email to me, like you have this sense of things, don't you? Like you have a really strong sense of things.
Yes.
You don't deviate from that. Like when you have a sense, like I'm referencing the fact that when you were 21, you're like, no. I know you want to hook up and get together, and us, no, not right now. And you friend zoned him. To you, it wasn't like brushing him off. It was like you just had a different sense that no, that's right now is not the time.
No.
Like you knew, he didn't know, but
I just knew that wasn't a place where I needed to focus right then. And I was young, and I just gotten overseas. I was backpacking and I was enjoying, different cultures, it wasn't the time, I think.
When it was the time though, like once it clicked and once it was the time.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm getting at. And by the way, Carrie's Instagram is scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now. The Asian Travelers on Instagram. Once you were of the mindset that this is the time, like you're not someone either who wastes time.
No, I just knew that it was like, I'm the kind of person that jumps off a cliff knowing that someone's going to catch me.
Well, that's a good analogy. It takes faith to,
yeah.
Most people never jump. They find all the reasons not to jump.
Yeah.
And faith solves a lot of that problem. Let me ask you this. You get married to him. At that point, you're 31, right? When you got married to him? And then let's get into a little bit of the tougher stuff now.
Yeah.
You guys were married 10 years. He was from America. You were from England. A little bit of that journey for the people that are watching now before we talk about the tragedy that befell you a year ago.
Yes. We were missionaries together living overseas, and we lived in Asia for about 7 or 8 years. And then, and we got to realize that most husbands and wives go to work and then they come back. We lived, worked, breathed every single moment with each other, and we loved it. And that's, on a sidetrack, that's kind of why we were looking at team driving a few years ago.
Right.
One of the hardest things coming back stateside to live, say, a normal life was being away from each other during, he was at his work, I was at my work. We would call each other when we were home from work, and people just didn't understand that. But that was the relationship that we had. And my brother-in-law, he's, he just says, what I saw on YouTube was something I've seen good people in healthy marriages for 50 years. They're married 50 years, he says. But what I saw in your marriage, he says, I've never seen that ever in a million years. What you guys had was just something that you don't get to see very often in this world.
Right. Well, even there's a picture on your Instagram feed, and people can go over and look at it, but there's a picture where you're holding your rings up. Well, actually, I'm going to hold off on that story because we have to tell about the tragedy that befell him. But, just a real close relationship. How close was it? Because you told me a story in the interview of how you guys lived that most people, like they think I can't get in the truck and spend all my time in a 10 by 10 foot space with somebody. I don't care how much I love them. How did you guys spend a lot of your time in some of those years as missionaries? You told me that story about the van.
As we would say in England, inside each other's knickers, close quarters a lot. We we lived and breathed each other. From sun up to sundown, we were always together. Always. We were hardly ever separated. You have people say, oh, when so-and-so retires, I don't know what I'm going to do with him. Or, when we get to retirement, what are we going to do with each other? And my husband and I just didn't understand that concept. Not that I have anything against anything. It just was, we just had a very unique relationship. And I think sometimes some of the things that you go through in a life like the life that we led, it either makes or breaks you, and it really kept us together. And again, every day you have to make that choice, that.
I think the takeaway, what we're about to get into, the takeaway from that 10 years with him where you were married to him is you guys liked each other and loved each other enough that even 24/7 really wasn't enough time together.
No. Oh, it wasn't. It wasn't.
That could be a great country song. 24 hours wasn't even enough time.
Sometimes if even going out for coffee with some girlfriends, it was kind of like, oh, do I want to go with my girlfriend or do I want to stay home with my husband? In fact, I don't even, it was something special.
Let me say this to all the dudes out there watching right now. Find a girl like that. A girl that says, you know what? I don't want to go out with the girl. I want to hang out with you. I want to do everything with you. As a matter of fact, I want to be with you so much we can even live in a van for years on end and see each other wake up, go to bed, eat together, sleep together, all of it, 24/7. How many years were you guys that close? All the 10 years?
We were married, yes, from the day we were married to the day, we spent a little time in Europe, even in a VW minivan. I think like one of the old Westphalias, not the US vans, and with a 120-pound Labrador Tibetan Mastiff dog. So we lived in a van for 6 months together. So we've definitely been in close proximity.
Well, and so many people can't even comprehend that kind of closeness. And also, I'm sure you guys argued and fussed and fought, but
so any argument or tiff or the divide of peace was, if I don't ever see him again, is this argument worth it? And he thought the same way. If I don't see her again, or if one of us dropped down dead right now and then, is that argument worth it? And most of the time, it really wasn't, and if it was, then we would sit down and we would talk it out and we would discuss it and we would figure it out, because it was important.
Hold on, young lady. Hold on, you powerful adventurer woman, you. Hold on. I want you to say that slower because I got chills all over my whole body when you said that. Like, if you were to leave today or tomorrow and you were gone from the earth, is it worth what we're arguing about? I got chills again when I said it myself, and you were the one that said it first. Yeah. Say that slower, please.
For us, because of the kind of life we lived, even every day, say in Thailand, we got on a scooter, we could have got sideswiped by a vehicle running a red light and end up dead, because there was the highest amount of deaths on scooters in the world in Thailand. Every day, just go down to the grocery store, not doing other things. And for us, if one of us would drop down dead at any time now, or if I wouldn't see you again today, those arguments or those tiffs, would they be worth it? And most of the time, they're just not.
That's true. That's such a powerful, that alone, if we get nothing else, which we're going to get more, but if we get nothing else out of this whole interview with you, that alone is that's a nugget that every dude and every girl they need to find that person that they look at and go, you know what? All this silly stuff doesn't matter. No. We can argue about whose feelings got hurt and what I said that you didn't like and blah, blah, blah. But if you were to die right now, what would I think about tomorrow about that argument? Well, how would I frame it? Would it have been worth it, the words I said, or the things that I'd cut you off for hours on end or days on end not talking to you? And you know what? Most times, if you really love the person, absolutely not. It's all just small stuff.
One of the most powerful things is I married my best friend. And, sometimes I'm not saying if you have a best friend who's a male or a female, or the same, whatever, that you're supposed to marry them, because sometimes that doesn't work. But my husband was my best friend.
Was he secure in that? Like, let me say this. I'm not going to speak for all men, but I'm going to say this. Most dudes that I talk to, because I don't hang around a lot of dudes. I never did it even growing up. I didn't hang around a lot of dudes. I wasn't the guy that went out with the pack of people and they were all dudes. It wasn't me. Most dudes really have a very limited understanding of how to really engage women. And what you're saying there is like, it's so just mind blowing to most guys because they don't understand it. To them, it's a dog that's confused.
Yeah. I guess for me personally on my journey, I don't want to be, and I say this very lightly, I don't want to be a typical woman that gets upset over these silly things that are like what we've been talking about that aren't worth arguing over. And I guess the kind of life I've led, it's been very black and white. And I've seen a lot of people suffering greatly to the point where sometimes it will break your heart to see how people have suffered in the world that are not from America or Europe. And so a lot of things that are big deals in our countries or in our culture compared to kids living in a trash pile, or a woman that had to make a choice to keep 3 children and starve, or sell one of the children to traffickers. I mean, these are decisions that people have to make every day on a daily basis. So for me, being faced with that and experiencing difficulty and hardship and a lot of things, and I'm not saying that people's problems are not valid, but I pick and choose very wisely about what's important and what's not important to life.
And your husband, was he confused about first got together? We were, by the way, just setting you up. We're going to start talking about the tough stuff now in just a minute. But was he confused at your nature when he first met you, and as he began being your husband? Was he confused about how that all worked with you? Like he didn't understand?
No, I guess he knew who I was, so I think that's what attracted him. I think that's what he fell in love with as well. Was that he says, "Oh, you're not a typical Western woman. I don't have to do." And I want to stay humble. I don't want to say like I'm this best woman in the world, but he didn't have to deal with me overspending or going out and trashing him with my girlfriends, and I protected him. And I don't know, I think, and even his work buddies, are like, every lunchtime, you're on your phone with your woman again, but they really could see that he genuinely would rather talk to me than he would talk to his work buddies, having lunch. I think just our relationship and our friendship was so, I don't know, it didn't confuse him. I guess it could confuse people. I don't know. He wasn't a typical guy either, I think for me, when I put his interests before my own, and when he puts my interests before his own, and that's mutual. It's mutual. It has to be mutual. It can't just be one-sided. But when it's mutual, and I'm talking about maybe marriage more than anything, and it doesn't have to be just marriage. But when that is mutual, it works really well, because I'm always looking for his interests over mine. He's always looking for my interests over his, and it complements, and it's a good relationship.
We're 22 minutes in, and we could have written 3 books right now on the points you've made. 3 books, not 1 book, 3 books. Because what you just said, like all the dudes that were, giving him grief about you and him being on the phone all the time, they wish they had a girl that wanted them as much as you wanted him. I won't get too much more deep into that, but they all wish they did. So let's turn left here into some of the tough stuff.
Yes.
So you were with him 10 years, and then what happened? Like, why'd you guys leave the missionary field?
We ran out of funding, but also some visas, troubles in countries, and I think it was just time, without getting into too much detail. But and also even our economies, things are costing more. Our pay scale is not going up as much as things are costing. Inflation is higher and higher, but cost of living is going up. But yet, so people just don't have that extra cash that they used to have, even just to do anything, to give to the poor, to like they used to have before. People are struggling. We struggle to pay the rent. We struggle to, or even in the West, we work, and we pay out all this money, and then we don't have anything at the end of it. So I think just times and seasons again were changing. So we ended up leaving.
And you came back to the States at that point?
We went to Europe. We lived in a VW van for 6 months to try and figure out if Europe was kind of a choice on my side of the passports. We decided that America was probably the better place for opportunity. And I just want to say, as an immigrant, it's a privilege to be here, not a right. And even, and I'm not going to get anything far left, far right, with all that's going on in the world today, America is still one of the best countries in the world. And I really am privileged, and I'm honored to be able to have the privilege and the opportunity to live here. And even compared to my own countries or Europe even. So.
Yeah. Yeah. In a vehicle a little bit larger than a truck as far as the space front to back. And then share a little bit about the story about where the tragedy for you hit. And you were at that point, you were 40 when that hit, right?
Yeah, I was
41.
Yeah. So we'd been married. Actually, it was 1 month before our 10th anniversary. I had to wait about 18 months to get my green card, because it was illegal for me to work here until I got my paperwork sorted out. So we lived on one income for almost 18 months before I was able to work legally. And then, so anyway, long story short, we looked into trucking and team driving as a ways to make good money, because we gave everything away. We didn't have anything, but it was the best thing for us. But when we come back, we're in our 40s. My husband was in his late 40s, and we needed to make a career for ourselves. And so we looked at team driving, and we were in the middle of trying to settle our lives down to a place where we were ready to do that as a possibility. Again, I couldn't say that we were going to go into that 100%, but that's what we were looking at. And then he was at work, I was at work. We said goodbye in the morning, and I got a phone call from the hospital that he'd been involved in a car accident. When I got to the hospital, he was already dead.
When was that?
That was in October of last year.
Okay, so that's been October, what, November, December, January, February, March. So that's not even been 5 months.
No.
Okay, and so you guys were you've had a relationship. Let's just say that outright and directly. You had a relationship like most people wish they ever could have in their life with anybody, much less their friend, their lover, their confidant. You know, you had that relationship for 10 years, and then you lose them in a microsecond with plans on the table about what you're going to do.
Yeah, place to place, and we were going to settle down and then, get into a career. Anyway.
Well, the reason I wanted to address some of that is because you guys were starting, like he was starting that life of let's look for a job, a quote unquote, a real job, not being a missionary, not trying to share your faith. That job began, job search for him began in his middle to late 40s, for you, early 40s.
Yes.
And most people can't comprehend that. Like most people, they've been in the grind of going to a 9 to 5 with, a 15-minute break, open or whatever you do, lunch break, a half an hour, driving to and from. They've been in that grind since they were 18 years old and got out of college, or 19. And they don't understand what you've done with your life for the last 20 some years, and him too, that you guys just traveled the world and spoke to people and used and spoke your faith. But then you found each other and had this amazing, comprehensive, deep, true relationship. And I don't want to make it better than it was or worse than it was, but you were together all the time and you still liked each other,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yes.
That's a feat in and of itself, all the time.
He was
And then you plan on getting into trucking. He dies 5 months ago in a car accident. Most people, put aside gender, most people, when that kind of tragedy hits, you had a relationship with him that most people crave. Most people wish they could even have a day of that, much less 10 years of that. There's people watching the stream right now that you and your spouse or significant other or lover, you haven't had 1/10 of what Carrie's described, and you've settled into that relationship because it's the best you can do in your own mind, and your faith is limited on what if you step off that cliff and jump, what's going to happen, and yet you're dying every day because you don't have that relationship. You don't have that, like what I always call it is like when I come home to something, that's my refuge as a man. I want to come home and I want to recharge. I want to regroup. I want to have someone that's going to lift me up and hold me up a little bit. I don't need to be held up, but you know what I'm saying, as a man, but I need that so that when I go back out those doors and attack the world, I have that strength from right there where I live and breathe with the most important person in my life. Most people never even get 1/10 of what you've talked about.
No.
Yeah,
I always, even just as a woman, I'm independent and I'm adventurous, but for me, I really wanted to be the nurturer, and I wanted to make sure that our home was a peaceful place, a sanctuary for my husband, so when he does come home from work, even though I've just worked the same hours, when he comes home, I've got plans for food, and he can sit down and we can just sit down at the table and have a meal and discuss about what our days was, how was things going, what was difficult about your day, and just we sat down almost every evening and had a meal together and just chit chatted about our days, and it was our home was a sanctuary,
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't. I mean, we all had our ups and downs, and we've always had also had challenges. It's not perfect here, But what decision do you make about that?
Well, you've taken a path since you were a young lady at 21 years old that you're just going to go create your life. You're not going to stay within the boundaries of what society says a life.
No way.
You're not going to live it that way. You're not going to abide by the social norms. You're going to go do it your way. Like you even looking at your pictures on Instagram with all the pain you've been through in 5 months, there's a hurt in your eyes, but there's also like this strength that like no, I'm not done. This has been rough, but I'm not done. I'm not done. And I'm not going to go sit and drink a lot and start, pilling up and medicating myself. I'm going to deal with this and move forward. Now, let's get to this now, because again, Carrie's Instagram is scrolling across the bottom of the screen, the Asian Travelers. What are you doing right now with your life 5 months after his passing?
So for me, the choice would either lay down and die or get up and just stand and start moving forward. And that doesn't mean that my husband's death is any less and I didn't just get over anything. I'll just be honest with you. There's times where I just start bawling and I'll cry uncontrollably for an hour or so, and it comes out of nowhere, you know. So I'm not like this strong person that I'm over it now and I'm moving forward. I'm still carrying this. I feel like my heart's being flayed open, and there's no wall to protect me. But we had a plan, and we had an idea about what would make our lives better and not just be stuck in a cubicle. You know, my husband used to joke that even though we try to settle, we're still gypsies. We're gypsies at heart. And so right now I'm in week 2 of truck driving school to get my CDL A license.
Now, some of the pictures
Oh dear.
on Instagram, by the way, try to check out your Instagram. Is it private?
I think so. Sorry, I don't have I'm not really on social media much, so even putting this across, I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means. So I think it's private.
Okay, well, she sent you a request to be a friend on Instagram so she can see your posts and you can see her.
I'll have a look at that and let you. I finally figured out how to do that, so I will do that.
So 5 months in to your husband's passing, in a microsecond, your whole life changed. You refused with your faith to believe that that was all you deserved in life.
Yeah.
Like I think most people, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I think most people, they wallow in their pain because somewhere in their brain, they think that's all they deserve, rather than looking at that as like, you know what am I supposed to take away from this? And obviously, if it happened, whatever's happening is supposed to happen. I'm supposed to learn a lesson, supposed to keep moving forward, and supposed to still retain my faith and even get stronger in my faith, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could either, for me, it was black and white. I could either walk away from my faith and in who I am and in how I have lived the last 40 years of my life, or you dig your heels and you stand up straight and I clung to my faith. This for me, it was the only thing that made sense in this crazy world. And so I clung to my faith, and it's stronger than it's ever been before.
I don't know how people get up every day and think that this is all there is. I don't understand that. Like I am so fulfilled. And when I live to my talents, I have 4 talents, which is being a student, a teacher, a creator, and a small pack guy. But when I live to those, I'm totally fine. Life is tough. But when I get outside of what my path is and I try to look around everybody else is doing, that's when all my bad stuff starts, because then all the comparisons and who's driving what and who lives where, none of that stuff matters. None of it matters, you know, and people try to equate success with things. And yet those same people, if they would have gone through what you went through 5 months ago with your best friend, lover, confidant, they would be in the bottle, the pills, they would be, you know, contemplating taking themselves out. You're like, nope, this isn't, there's a lesson. And obviously I'm supposed to learn something. There's a picture that you put up that's you holding the rings. It's a black and white photo. You're like, I'll see you again.
Yeah.
You know, it was an amazing 10 years and I'll see you again.
Yeah.
I'm going to choke up saying much more. If you want to talk about that, please feel free, because I'll choke up.
I don't know. I'll just say it. I'm Christian, and my faith is in Jesus Christ and God Almighty. And I know I think that also helps with our time here on this earth. You know, I know where I'm going when I die. You know, I know I'm not scared to pass away. I'm not scared to die. And my husband felt the same way. And so for me, it's like encourage. How can I help? How can I give of myself to others and for myself, live this life as best I can and full of adventure as I can, and seize every moment. You know, I was apprehensive about this video. I know. I don't like being, and it's not just about losing my husband. I don't like being on video, but I know that it's got to encourage others. And if it does, then I'll take the opportunity. And the opportunity was presented. Why not take every opportunity that's given to you, you know? Yeah.
Well, when I read your story that you sent me a quick, either an email or a DM through one of the social media channels. When I read that, you talked about how you guys were getting into trucking as a team, then he passed away in a truck accident. And again, I tell people all the time, I mean, I'm 40 on YouTube, but I'm 60 in real life. Is going to kick you in the head. It's what you do with it that matters.
Yes.
And this business for a female who's like, you're 41 starting a quote unquote career.
Yeah.
You know, you were in a career, but most people don't consider being a missionary a career.
No.
It didn't pay well. And you didn't like, on an expense account. And here you are. And by the way, how tall are you?
5'5".
5'5". Looking at the Instagram, what are you weighing? 98 pounds soaking wet?
No, I'm 140 pounds, but I don't look.
Come on now. Come on. But anyway.
Chinese ask you that all the time, so I don't care. You ask whatever you want.
Well, you look shredded and lean.
I am.
But even in all of that, you're in trucking, and I think especially with your personality makeup, you're an adventurer at heart, you're very independent, very self-assured, you have an unshakable faith. Like trucking, once you get in the seat in your bank account, let's just say 60 the first year. And then let's say that which I don't think it's going to take you that long, but you start really biting down and finding your path, because it's going to take you being in the seat to figure out what you want to do. And then you get to $100,000 a year just driving a tractor trailer.
Yeah.
Little, 5'5", 198-pound nothing woman driving a tractor trailer. That's just a great story. Like, you can rebuild your whole life. You can catch up, Carrie. You can catch up with all the women that have been raising babies or in the workforce trying to raise the babies and have a job. You're going to catch up and surpass most of them within the first 3 years if you do this right. And people don't understand, like, you can change your life really quickly making a couple $100,000 in 3 years.
Yeah.
You know?
And I'm not saying that, oh yeah, I'm gung ho for this. I'm scared stiff about doing this, and I'm very like, what the heck am I getting myself into? But I know that my husband and I have done the research. I've done the research, and for a career, I don't want to be stuck inside an office Monday through Friday, the grind, especially the kind of life I lived. That's more depressing than anything for me,
Well, then you're going to be around a bunch of people who've never lived your passionate life with your husband, your lover, your friend, and your life to this point where you just went out and you just traveled the world and you followed your faith. Most people have been in that little box of their office job since they were 18 or 19 years old. Like, they can't comprehend. You walk in, you're an alien to them. Like, you've been out of the workforce and you're just now starting.
Done reception work for, a year, 6 months one place, 6 months another, and, admin and stuff like that, without getting too personal. But you talk to people and they just look at you like a deer in the headlights. Like, they don't understand a word I'm saying and get it either, But
well, your story, even when I read the DM you sent me, I mean, I got chills, because I'm like, I got to get this woman up and tell her story, because so many women need to hear your story.
Yeah.
And we've been on here now 41 minutes. You got to get up in the morning, go back to CDL school. I want you to do me a favor, if you can, as you progress through your journey, because you're going to school, like, you're not having a company sponsor you.
No.
You're paying your own way so that you can make a choice where you want to go drive.
Yeah, there was two choices. You could either pay your own way through school and then get hired on. There's pros and cons in both, I think. You upfront your money, but then you can get a company to reimburse tuition depending on the company that you're with. But then you could also go with a company that pays for everything, but then you're under contract for 1 or 2 years. So I did my research, and for me personally, sometimes some people don't have the money to do that either. Long story short, that was the best option for me. Both avenues are good and both have their pros and cons.
It's a beautiful thing how it's worked out. I would just ask you if you'll do me a favor and subscribers a favor. You have a few people in the chat that are saying they want to be able to follow you through your journey, but just reach back out when you're ready. Once you get through CDL school, as you start making a decision about where to go drive. You're in the Texas area right now for school, but
I was living in the Northwest. I landed here because a friend took me in just to kind of go through this personal walk right now. I was a bit of a loss. But even then, my husband and I had an apartment. He passes away. Within that month, I shut down the apartment. I put everything in storage. I packed up my truck and drove 2,000 miles here, because staying in Montana wasn't the option. But I miss the mountains and I miss the open range. And I've seen some of your videos like this morning, a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh, so I mean, I don't need to be bouncing around again, but I think I'll be here a little while. But I really want to get back up to the Northwest somewhere. I like the open space. I like the small towns. I like, the colder weather and stuff. So, and the great outdoors in the mountains and that. So who knows where the future takes me.
And I'm addicted to it now that I'm out here again. And now that I'm driving, because when I was out here before, I was doing off-road diesel and crude oil, and it was a little bit different gig. But now that I'm driving over the road and I'm through all these states, I've now fallen in love with the whole area. That's why I'm going to buy a place either in Wyoming or one of the Dakotas.
Yeah.
I'm going to start adding to my real estate portfolio. It's just gorgeous. You can't wake up to a better scenery view.
No, I really miss where I was, but I don't think it was good for me on my own without family or friends or anything to stay up there, especially during the winters when they're very dark and there's not a lot of sunshine. I think personally that was a smart move, but I do miss it though.
Yeah, no, I'm falling in love every day more and more. So Carrie's Instagram is the Asian Travelers on Instagram. You see it on the bottom of the screen scrolling across. It is a private Instagram, so you got a friend request her. Put in your friend request. I saw you on Red's channel. That way she knows you're legit. And it's just an amazing story. Carrie, here's my gut talking to you. And here's my gut with your story. I've been chewing over this for the last couple of days. There's going to be Like this whole thing for you, for other women, is going to be like a flashlight for them, where you're helping them find their way, because you're talking about things most women crave.
Yeah.
You know, a man in their life who just absolutely adores them, wants to be around them 24/7, 365. You know, you like you said, got for the best in me. That's
Yeah.
a very rare thing to truly, truly, truly find in the world. Especially as you start getting close to somebody, you get past that honeymoon stage and you start seeing who they really are. And then you see some of the other things pop in. All of a sudden, the luster wears off. Like in you guys' case, the luster never wore off. Like it just kept on getting polished up, you know?
And you know, we had an ex-wife and children and other things to deal with as well, without getting too personal, you know. So it wasn't all fun, you know, fun and games either, you know. But even through all of those things that pop up in your life, you know, it's just you make a choice. You go take this way or this way, you know. And sometimes the harder road brings out the better future, I guess, you know.
Well, it's a great story. Please, when you want to update us, please don't ever hesitate to text me. Say, hey, Red, I want to get back on the channel. You're an inspiration to other women out there. More so, that's this whole stream. I told you in the pre-interview, the whole stream is, even though it's going to be for everybody, there are so many women that need to hear your story. And I'm looking forward to you starting your journey. You little adventurer, you. And you're resilient. You're tough. You're gentle, and you have the faith of
Hardships, you know, and that's the next life after this, you know. And that's my hope. You know, my hope is there, and until then, I just live this life, you know.
It's an amazing story. Thank you again so much for getting on the channel,
Thank you
telling
so
your story freely. You guys that are watching an hour later, please share the video. Number one, share it to any woman in your household that's going through job loss, tragedy, divorce, medical bills, whatever. Share it, because trucking is a solution. And there are team drivers, like she and her husband were going to team drive. There's team drivers out here, and one of the persons being brand new, that have made 170, 200,000 their first year driving a truck. If you like each other, this business can change your lives, and and there's no politics. Are you willing to come out here and live this lifestyle, which is a very solitary lifestyle sometimes, but be out here doing this? It's a great paying gig, especially for more mature people.
Yeah.
Miss Carrie, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Red. I'm really privileged to even be on this stream, so thank you.
Well, I'm sorry we got started so late, because if we begun earlier, we'd have a lot more people watching. But it's just a great, great story. I'm looking forward to the updates. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. God bless. Red Viking Werewolf Trucker Nation. Me and Miss Carrie, we are bominos.